Hi, welcome everyone to our book launch. This is the first time that we've done an event like this with our book series. And so this is so exciting to have some of the authors be here and talk about some of the case studies that are presented in this e-textbook. And so we just welcome you and we are happy to have you here to learn more about this initiative that we're so excited about. Just a few things to know about the authors is that they all identify as community psychologists and embody the values and of the field, and they reflect it in the work and how they engage with communities. And so you'll find that as you explore the e-textbook more. With this initiative, one of the goals was to really make this accessible for as many people as we can in terms of thinking about equity in publishing, also wanting to give more opportunities to BIPOC scholars and making sure that the work that is being done is being reflected in a textbook and reflected in a resource for community members. And so now I will pass this on over to one of the co-editors, Jerry Palmer.
Yep. Thank you, Amber. And so, this is a great little informal group. So, we'll just have a conversation. Let's just have a discussion about textbooks and, what they look like and how the OER space, I think, can as Amber shared, help us to bring equity to academic publishing, as well as, get out. I was thinking about earlier, thinking about the fact that I'm really happy about this being a case studies in community psychology practice to give honor to our practitioners. I know that's been a struggle throughout SCRA, in getting the recognition. And of course, at one particular point, and we're trying to work on it, is the bringing it to the surface that community psychology, or not so much as even bringing it to the surface, but thinking about it from an applied discipline, right? The applied discipline that it is. And so that's very encouraging that we are bringing that to surface. So I don't want to talk too long. Amber gave two great points about the context or the reasons why we thought to put this book together. And of course, the other one was there wasn't one available. There wasn't a textbook, traditional or e-textbook that is solely dedicated to community psychology practice, in the sense of providing actual case stories or case studies to do that, to show that. And so, that was the primarily, I said, this isn't happening. I was looking for a textbook in social psychology case studies. I was teaching a class and I did find one, and that triggered my community psychology hat. And I said, well, why don't we have one in this in our industry, in our field? And started to think about how we could put that together. Made some phone calls to folks that I know would at least maybe think about jumping on board, even though they might not do it, but they would at least think about it. And so, of course, that was Judah Viola, who, I'm my former dissertation chair, and we've done some work together, presented at some conferences and so forth. So, you always think about, well, Judah might do this, he may entertain my madness for a minute or so. So anyway, he said, yeah, this sounds like a good idea. And so we, put that forth. And so my co-founder of Community Wellness Institute, where I do all of my community psychology work in the community, thought it was a good idea as well. And so I'm going to push this in just a second to someone I'm so glad to have with us is our instructional designer, Veronica Engel, and just let her introduce herself. I know she's not been on, our calls, and you probably don't know her, but we were so delighted to have her because I think all of us were thinking about trying to make a stab at whether the image goes on the left or the right. They were like, and Ty said, well, Jerry, I think we need an instructional designer. And we were all like, yeah. And he knew someone who agreed to come aboard with this great project and who stepped in. And I think pretty much 100% of the credit of how it's arranged, et cetera, and images, well as figures and tables, definitely hats are off to her for helping us put it in that book look, right? You can have stories, et cetera, but I think getting it into, I'll call it a book look, definitely belongs to that person. And so, as we move forward with getting authors, of course, we have three of them here who I'm excited to, three who I'm excited to have with us as well. We pared it down from maybe 50 responses to 11 case stories, 11 authors that put that into the book. And I do want to add as well that we were fortunate to have these are peer-reviewed manuscripts. These are peer-reviewed chapters. So I do want to stress that because I know that that's important for credibility purposes and just, in the academic circle and just to make sure, because we can't see everything as editors, right? And we didn't see everything. We had some great responses for how we could strengthen the stories and what that might look like moving forward. So yeah, right. Thank you, Judah. Yeah, I was like, it's a 4, but then Susan, don't let me forget another one of my partners in crime, so to speak. I typically am in a workshop or a forum at conferences, and Susan is there. Yeah. So you always need those people in these journeys. So yeah, definitely, I appreciate you being here as well, Susan. So I'm gonna leave it there. And for questions, please, more questions that I won't go through here. I want to, give the time to the authors and of course to Veronica as well. But if you have questions for Judah or I or any one of us, we will certainly have get you that information. And please pass this book on. Just today, I learned that we have 2 adoptions, one coming from someone in outside of Seattle for a community college, and then the other one sent us a formal adoption form that's in the back of the book to say that they're adopting it for the fall of 2020. So it's really exciting. So please, put the word out that, students have given their, and of course, they're the ones that are the primary audience. And I've got some testimonials that they enjoyed it, that it did give them insight into really what community psychologists do. And so that's been a great piece that, we're adding as well. So, stop there and hand this over to Veronica. Please introduce yourself, and we commend you and thank you and all of the above. So I'm Veronica.
Hi, everyone. I'm Veronica Engel. And as Jerry noted, I was the instructional designer on this project. And I must tell you, I was so proud to be a part of this and to be able to read those case studies. I learned so much about, psychology in general and just things that are going on in the world. And talking about this with other people and the stories that I'm seeing in some of those case studies. And it was a lot of fun trying to, find the illustrations to match the words, even though some of the authors did provide, pictures and things and, where to place them. So it was a very interesting project and a very heartfelt project as well. And I look forward to continuing to work with this awesome team on anything else that they'll be doing in this space. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Veronica. And you can betcha we'll be calling you we've got some other stuff going. So yeah, thank you much for your generosity and generous, participation with us. Yep, thank you much. So Amber, yeah, are we want to move to authors or what you?
Yeah.
Okay.
So let's get this conversation started. So all of us that are present that chose to be authors in this project, I'm going to just popcorn it over to Susan. What inspired you to participate in this?
I think because we had a story, we had something to contribute. I'd worked with, I really need to give a lot of credit to all of our co-authors. We had many, but it was mostly started out as a collaboration with Dr. Kyra Brown and I. And it was fun to be able to, we had put a lot of work into the needs assessment that we did, and it was fun to be able to have a place to share that story of how that all unfolded and what we had done. And so I think that's what inspired me, is a chance to tell our story about what we did.
Jackie, what about you? In your chapter, what inspired you to participate in this?
Well, for me, I've been working in communities for over 30 years, and one of the things that I really love to do is find moments in the events and everything that I work in, and find those epiphany moments and what does it say to me, and its impact. And so when I picked this, it was the celebration of Gala Day. And on our first session, we actually had the artist who really spearheaded this collaboration, and Pilar Ordain, and she is just, an amazing person to work with. And so what I really enjoyed is that she has a way of engaging people in a very authentic and spiritual way. And so I brought my mom, and Gala Day is a day of celebration. A gala is a headdress that is worn, and this background is actually the ending part of the Gala Day. But all the women come and we gather, and she supplies all of these fabrics, and just the whole idea of sitting in this chair and having someone wrap your head, and we call it wrap your beauty. She has, and matter of fact, that's what she calls her organization, a wrap your beauty movement. And we are all wearing these beautiful galas, and there's just something very healing about this whole process as people gather. We sup together, we dance together, we exercise, we perform, and there's a sharing and giving the respect to the elders and listening to our children and having them honor us with performance. And so, I was like, okay, I this is a feeling I've never felt before. And so at the end of the event, we all walk down to the lakefront, and it's like a cleansing, and we actually go into the water. And I remember as I was walking down, people were like coming off the beach, and they were like, "Who are you? What are you doing? What is this? This seems so exciting," because this beauty of people, you just walking in unison and in pride. And, the women who come together, it's like for a moment, they have this ability to just peel off their burdens. And using art in what I call spectacle is so important, because whenever you're engaged in spectacle and getting people engaged in a project, you never forget it. It stays with you for life. And this was definitely one event that stayed with me for life. And as I always tell people, you know, and when you look at the book, you'll see some pictures of my mom is in there. And my mom is no longer with me, but this is an event I'll never forget. And knowing that I had this opportunity to share it with her, and the respect that she received as an elder. And we don't always, and you know, in America, we don't always take that respect to our elders, but this was an event where it did happen. And so, and you know, as I said before, you know, people were coming up to my mom and they wanted to touch her, shake her hand, hug her, kiss her, whatever. And she was just so overwhelmed with joy, like she never, you know, and I know she's, you know, my mother's a teacher, so I know she's been appreciated by her students, but to have this kind of public acknowledgement from everybody, from every walk of life, honoring her, bowing to her, was just, I got jealous. I'm like, this is my mom. Wait a minute, you know. So it was just definitely a pleasure. And you know, I have to tell you, Pilar is just one of these creatives that, you know, she does this constantly. She always brings people together. I think she, you know, I wish I had her information, because I think, you know, every seasonally she will go to the lakefront. And so, you know, one of the gods is called Yemaya, goddess of water. That is Pilar. So she loves the water, and you really have a full experience with her. And I wanted to bring that to the readers. I think it's very important when you're really looking at how to engage community, to come with it with a sense of humility. And I think having that ability would really help you as a community psychologist. And I really wanted people to see how it's done in underrepresented communities. That's it. Yeah.
Thank you, Jackie. Anna, what inspired you to be a part of this? And can you share some of what your case study is about?
Sure. First, I'd like to say it's great to actually see you all. And I'm really excited about reading more about all this great work. So initially, like others have said, I was inspired because I wanted to tell our story, the story of our partnership. And so my case study is about a participatory evaluation partnership with participants in a Housing First program. So a lot of them had been on the streets for decades, and had, at the beginning of this project back in 2014, had just been housed. And so I think when we started writing this chapter, we had been meeting together weekly for 5 years. And these are people who society has said have nothing to offer. They don't have any strengths, you know, they're just people to be helped and served. And that is completely, you know, not the experience that we had as forming this partnership. And so through our partnership, we did a lot of arts-based research, and which I've seen is kind of a theme throughout the textbook. So I'm excited about that. And have really just, you know, built community together. And so the case study is a lot. Initially, we had planned to do a lot, kind of a, you know, bouncing back and forth between different perspectives and how that process happened. But COVID happened, and a lot of our partners have chronic health conditions, and we weren't able to do that. We're still in touch, you know, through the phone and things like that, but we weren't able to do a collaborative writing experience like we wanted. So it turned into kind of the traditional researchers kind of looking back and reflecting on the process itself. And, you know, it's interesting. I started this project when I was a first-year graduate student, had no idea what I was doing. And I had just gotten off the plane in Hawaii and I'm from South Carolina. So I showed up at our first kind of group meeting with some food because my mom always taught me you bring food to anything. And so apparently that's a thing here too. So so it kind of has been this kind of growing process for me, from being a graduate student to, now being out of grad school. And so it's a nice way to kind of reflect and think through some of the successes and maybe some of the things we could have done better. So yeah, but I think ultimately I wanted to tell the story as best as I could.
Thank you. And Susan, your project was a needs assessment. Can you tell a little bit more about your case study?
Oh, goodness. Yeah, I have to remember back because they had me do a separate one after COVID once again. So it's like, let me see, this was the original one. Basically, it's the Ryan White Planning Council here in Dallas is predominantly comprised of consumers. And so they issued an RFP and I looked at it, a request for proposals, we need somebody. And I looked at it and said, oh, they already have somebody they've been working with. I'm not going to bother. And then I guess they didn't get any applications because then they issued it again and someone sent it to me and says, you need to go for this. And I was like, well, okay. So I went after it. And in doing so, I reached out to Kyra and said, hey, you want to do this with me? I think it'd be fun because we worked together in the past and now it was a chance for us to work together again now that she's at UT Arlington. And she said, yeah, and I have students. So that was really exciting because our co-authors are actually the students that worked on the project with us, co-authored this along with the Justin Henry, who works for the Dallas County Health Department. And he was our liaison to the Ryan White folks. And it was really a lot of fun in many ways because we were able to, and another person I think we must have acknowledged, but I don't know, it's been a long time since we wrote this. But Giovanna Merriman, another community psychologist who works at the Tarrant County Public Health Department, teaches part-time at UT Arlington, and she used a piece of this for her students' class project. So we were able to, they didn't offer enough money to do a really good job because they only had so much money. So we found ways to just cut costs and do what we could with what was there. And it was just an interesting process because we did focus groups with different groups. We looked at it, quite a lot of it, there was an intersectional approach as well because we looked at Black heterosexual women, we looked at Black gay men, or basically Black men who have sex with men. And we had a group of transgender individuals, men and women. But we were able back then, because it was before COVID, we were able to do these in person and sit down and had some great conversations. They had been set up by people who were part of the community, who were there with us to get things started, to introduce us. So I think we were quite trusted. And it showed later because when I did a post-COVID assessment, we were even able to do a transgender group. And I did one and then had to do a second one because the first group told their friends, like, yeah, you want to do this now. She's going to. So we did 2 transgender groups the second time, which shows that we're starting to build trust within that community, which is not easy here in Dallas because Black transgender women are being murdered here. So there's a lot of fear about coming out and talking to anybody and identifying themselves. So, there was a lot of trust building with the community, but I think that we were able to get some good information. And then doing the surveys was another challenge because when you don't have a lot of resources, but you need people in the field because not everybody's online. We have rural populations in the surrounding counties that don't have good internet. So there had to be a lot of outreach. And that's been one of the shortcomings in this area we found was that there's little inclusion of rural populations and little consideration actually And then in this last COVID needs assessment, I found that a lot of the transgender individuals living in rural populations and areas were having a lot of problems getting their hands on their hormone medications and things like that. So we're starting to really, I'm hoping that we get to do the next one. Kyra won't be able to participate because she's at a critical tenure juncture where she's got to be really focused right now, but I'll be working with her students if I get the contract. So I'll continue working with her and see if there's a way Giovanna wants to jump on board too, maybe. The RFP just came out like 2 days ago. But I don't know what else to say other than there was so much we learned. I think it points to the idea of doing this again with the same team so that we can continue to build on what we learned. Because if new people start to come in, there's a whole trust building, understanding the community and its issues, that the HIV community, because it just takes time. But I think one of the strengths we had too is, unlike prior consultants, we were willing to call out, specifically name things like racism as issues. We were able to come in and honestly say what needed to be said. And I think that is one of the reasons why they're wanting to work with us again, because we actually will. Too often consultants are hesitant to say too much because they don't want to piss anybody off, because they want to keep getting this job. So they know that if they can keep the powers that be happy by not saying things, well, I'm 65, I can say whatever I want to piss anybody off. It's like, what are they going to do to me now, right? And of course, you know, Kyra Brown is very dedicated to dealing with racial inequity as well. So I think that's the other part of our team, is that we were willing to dig deep into those issues and to call them out in the report in a way that hadn't been done in the past. I don't know what else to say about it. We learned a lot from the process. And like I say, hopefully we'll get to work together again on some more of these kinds of things in our community, because too often what gets reported in reports is not what was said. So it was good. It was a good experience, a very good collaborative experience with the community too.
Yeah, one of the themes that is really predominant within all of these case studies, there's this partnership, and there's these seeing and working with communities towards these different projects. And so I'll share a little bit about my specific chapter and what got me inspired to want to take part in this. Part of it was really seeing a lack of representation when it comes to inclusion, but specifically in the area of people with a lived disability when it comes to community events. And so through my nonprofit organization, Community Engagement Collective, where our mission is to foster human-centered connections through community-engaged events and research, we did a series called Dare to Dialogue, where essentially it was 3 different events. And each of those events highlighted a different story from someone with a lived disability. And so we had someone talk about living with a physical disability, someone with a cognitive, and then having a movie event as another way to get engagement. One of the common things with the promotion of the events is that the word disability was not a part of it, because really wanting to explore, yes, we know how dynamic inclusion is, and there's so many different layers and there's so many different areas that you can go with that, but really wanting people to come with an openness to explore, to learn, and to connect. And so with the first event, where we focused on storytelling from the perspective of someone living with a physical disability, essentially sharing what it was like to have wheelchair and have to sort of navigate the spaces that are not designed for you to actually thrive. When you think about going to different buildings and whether or not there's a way to get in, That's not something that some of us may not have to experience because each of our lenses are different. Our lenses in terms of the experiences that we bring to the spaces we occupy. So if that's not something familiar with, then that may not be something you consider. And so with that story, it was an opportunity for others to learn and think about. For example, a business owner said at the session, like, hey, I never thought about, can someone actually get into my building? And others said, yeah, I thought about that. But then what about the bathroom? Do you have a folding table that can hold someone that's of adult size? Is the bathroom wide enough for someone with a wheelchair to get in? All of those little details that may not be, you may not consider if that's not something you're familiar with or have access to someone who can give that sort of feedback and collaboration. The second story focused on cognitive ability. And one of the highlights from that story was simply a speaker was talking about, hey, what it was like in high school to not necessarily be able to participate in gym, how peers were supportive of that, didn't tease, didn't try to make fun of, didn't try to exclude, just accepted them for who they were in that space. And except for an experience with the gym teacher where the gym teacher essentially was saying, hey, you have to jump rope. And the person could not physically do that. And yet this gym teacher was really trying to push it. And what's beautiful about the story is that the students said, hey, that's not acceptable. You know that this is a challenge. And so for you to try to put him out and try to shun him for that is unacceptable. And the fact that students decided to sort of highlight that and share that and advocate and support is the type of things that embodies our field. The last story focused on a movie screening of Wretches and Jabbers, which is a story of two individuals that are traveling the world living with a disability and just really learning more about what it's like from their lens. And some of the things that came out of that session with members, because what we did was we had everyone that came participated to say, what does inclusion look like for you? And come in and have this word cloud creation at the beginning of our event. So everyone sort of sees, where's everyone coming from when you're coming into the space? And so some of the feedback was, hey, I never really knew, never considered certain things that people shared. And it brings awareness to how we interact with each other, how we should be mindful, considerate, understanding, and open, and just be aware that everyone, although it's a nice thing to say that we're all beautifully different, but we also have to recognize that and how our actions reflect that and that there's alignment. And so this was really something that was of passion to me, just because a lot of the work that I've done in my career and personally has been in this space, and to try to bring awareness. And I think that's also a common thread of all of the authors in wanting to bring awareness to a story with communities in a space that was accepting and that was welcoming and that was supportive of that story. Because sometimes a lot of the community work that's done, there's not a place for it. There's not a place to highlight and share it and learn from each other. And so it's really appreciative to have a book like this, where not only is this welcome, it's also going to be a living document where stories can continuously be added or maybe updated, whatever that need is, because the mechanism of the book allows you to provide feedback. And so the editors are really committed to taking that feedback and allowing it to contribute to how the book continues to evolve and adapt to the needs of those that are taking advantage of accessing the book.
Thanks, Amber. I'll just add on to the point you made about the book continuing to evolve, and we spoke about that this morning, and just want to put that call out for any of you who are on the call today. If you're not an author yet, but you're interested in becoming a contributing author, we're looking for additional stories, and we'll be putting a more formal call out for additional stories and case studies to be added. But also, as we were talking earlier about usage of a book like this in the classroom or with students, there are feedback forms that are built into the book as part of the table of contents, and we encourage folks to put anything as small as if you see a typo to much bigger, broader recommendations of what other stories you'd love to see or hear, what other interactive features. So there are some like Anna's that include videos. They all have a lot of them have beautiful photos that help illustrate the stories and bring them to life more. But there's certainly, and they all have, links to other resources and things like that, and discussion questions. But there's always more we could do, and if there are specific things that readers are looking for, we want to be responsive to those needs.
And this won't be the only event. This is the book launch. And so there's going to be other events to help support students, for example, that want to be authors in the textbook and just need some mentoring and just some support. And so there'll be some support around that. Also, this is a practice book. So there will be a collaborative event with the Practice Council. And what that'll look like, that will be shared with members once those details are fine-tuned. And this is an e-textbook. So how are people engaging with it in their classrooms? This is a space for learning and being able to sort of take assignments from each other and learn. One attendee said, hey, I'm going to have my students just pick a chapter that resonates with them and do a reflection. And so those are the types of things that as a community, let's share. Let's share about how this textbook is being adapted. We have another open course textbook too. And so some are fusing both of them, where one is talking about community psych and this is being the practice case studies examples. And there's so many different ways that this can look, and the feedback that you get from students will be invaluable in terms of how do we continue to make this book be an asset to others and allow it to continue to grow and align with the needs that we're seeing in the communities that we're working with.
So, makes me really think about also the practitioner side, and we are hoping that community-based organizations can use the case studies in their professional development programs or professional development for their staff who are already working in the field. So, of course, being a e-textbook and in the OER space, that was another another plus is we want to be non-traditional. It's the intent is to move away from the four walls in the classroom to the community. And again, that looks like a number of organizations who, may be able to, if not, in the technical sense as in the academic space, but more again in the here's what it looks like, kind of space in the community. And I think about that too, as I shared earlier, honoring the practitioner. It's an allied, it's applied discipline, and we want to make sure that we continue to make that a priority and to bring that forward in the work that we do, and to move the theory from practice. And I think one of the students who did give us some feedback shared, that they didn't understand it just with me sharing what is community psychology. But once they saw those case stories, they were like, one of those, as Oprah says, the aha moments, that they really could see exactly what that narrative, that text actually looks like in having a real live case story. And something else that's on my mind, just basically about, the practitioner side and that it's working to show what community psychologists really do and the diversity of it. And we also have one story in there. I think it's journeying. I can't even talk tonight. What is it? Journeying. How do you pronounce it? Somebody past hurt. Dr. Somerville, Judah, help me out.
Yeah, journeying.
Journeying, yes, past her. Yeah, Dr. Deidre Somerville's story, which is really about how they were working to put something together and it didn't turn out exactly as they hoped it would. And I love the fact that Judah mentioned and said it in a way that community is messy sometimes, right? You know, community isn't always this neat look. Well, it isn't pretty much ever this neat little package. And we want to be that non-traditional with it because that's interesting. You know, that's not a formula, basically, right? You know, we think about Euclid and all the other what is it? C, what is it? The Pythagorean. There I go, trying to pronounce it again. Theory. You know, these are real life people, real life stories, and so that's the beauty, I think, of it. And I know what it was I wanted to say too. For me, I walked through it, of course, as the editor, looking and reading each story, and I was so thrilled to my editors as well as authors and everyone here. I walked through them and I was there, right? You know, I was in Hawaii. I was, you know, in Senegal. You know, it took me to these places and I could envision, you know, the communities that I Lebanon and the south side of Chicago, right? And the south suburbs of Chicago. You know, I read Jackie's story about the arts community on Chicago's south side. And I've gone to is it ETA, Jackie, or what's over there on South Chicago? ETA,
Yeah,
right?
ETA Theater.
ETA
Yeah.
Theater. I've been over there, you know, and so it was just refreshing to just again walk through the stories and be right there, you know, on in those places. And that's from the geographic place, but even from the community or from the emotional spaces where community have us, I could see, you know, other you know, see through the lens of emotions as well, because all communities, of course, aren't physical, but you know, even those that bring you in emotionally was great as well. So I think we want to, Amber, right, open up questions now, or okay.
Yes. Are there any questions or comments that anyone would like to share?
I have a question for everybody. What do you all suggest we do to expand and continue to get the word out?
Well, I'd like to ignore your question and thank everybody for what sound like really interesting chapters. I'm looking forward to reading them. And the way you've grounded, it sounds like each of the chapters, at least of those you talked about today, in relation to a particular group that you worked with, also really illustrates the richness of community psychology and our capacity to work with, you know, so many different groups on so many important problems around oppression and you know, how people are addressing that constructively. So
I'm sorry, Chris, go ahead.
well, I didn't mean to take away from your question though, Judah, if you
No,
want
of course, anytime
yourself.
something interesting and valuable to add, I always appreciate it. So
Yeah.
no worries.
Well, I would, some suggestions for marketing and thinking about from a media perspective is maybe getting on some podcasts. There are some community psychologists that have active podcasts that may be open to having these conversations about the textbook and getting it out there. You know, maybe being, I'm going to step out the box here, but thinking of things, maybe it's a TikTok video. I don't have TikTok etiquette, so I would not be an expert to consult on this. But just thinking about, hey, we have to fit where people are connecting. And so be willing to step out and stretch in that way.
Cool.
That reminds me, we are putting together a vignette, a video vignette. Our other editor, Todd Rogers, who was here this morning, just putting together the three, Veronica, Judah, and I, doing some, 2-minute chats about the book, etc. So these are great, thoughts, around what to do. And thanks, Susan. Yeah, I didn't know that. I know when Amber mentioned podcasts, I thought about Dom, of course, and the TCP, Dominic Thomas, and the TCP. So yeah, definitely we'll get on there. He'll be happy to have us on.
Hello, PW. Questions or comments or ideas for the group?
I guess you could say I'm an outsider because I know nothing about this, but I was invited by one of the authors. But what I think is interesting is anytime you can put a first person on anything and let people read about it, that way they can really see what's really happening, because we all have our preconceived notions about what's out there. So until you read it and actually, you can see its work being done on it, you get a different feel of it. And as far as reaching out, there are a lot of organizations out there. You just have to get out there, do PR. You probably all are parts of other organizations, so maybe you could bring those in. I'm an accountant by background, so you got to put your word out there. Podcast, TikTok, YouTube. Start a YouTube channel, First Person Stories. It's out there. You just gotta, there's things bursting all the time. So it's been interesting, all the stories I've read, which wants me to read even more stories. But I like reading about first person because the preconceived notions really are out there, and you're not going to change everybody, but you may change the people who need to be changed, their thoughts. Thank you. I figured I would let you all see me who I was.
Thank you.
A few people out there.
We're glad you're here, and thanks for sharing. Those are all, great points.
Yeah, it kind of made me think to the point of, beyond the student. I think that a book like this is very valuable to policymakers and also to grant makers, especially because grant makers tend to send someone else out, and I think that if they were to look at what we have done and what we've put together, it might really influence them to go and see a little bit more for themselves. There's something about seeing it, firsthand and experiencing versus sending someone out and then them coming to a board who has really no level of knowledge or engagement about those communities. I always find very concerning. I hope there's no grant makers on this call, but I'll never forget. There was one time I did put a challenge out there to grant makers: go back and see what you funded. Because chances are you planted a seed and it has grown, and you need to know how it has grown and why it has grown. And once again, that was another reason why I chose this story, because I knew this was a story that a lot of people don't know about. And they need to know that, there are populations of people besides of what they have to deal with on a daily basis, whatever, that there are other things coming that is nurturing and healing and productive and prideful. And they need to see that too. They need to see that too. So really thinking outside of the box besides, academia, I think would be an excellent idea too.
In terms of the stories, and I do love the stories and how they could be used in academia. So right now I'm at the City Colleges of Chicago, and we're pipelining Chicago Public School students who in some communities are really struggling with their learning, but they definitely relate to stories and can grasp that concept of learning based on stories more than books. And so I really do embrace a different type of academic formula in terms of how we can really support and open up the minds of our students, because it's an easier transition for them to then start learning and understanding what books, the traditional way of learning in a book, once they can grasp a story and break that down. And so just tutoring with them and working with them in, embedded classrooms, I began to understand that from them. So this is a great concept, and hoping that it takes off and it really picks up across the academia world. I think that our students will see an increase in how they learn, how comfortable they are, and just reading in general and understanding it. So I really do appreciate the stories in the book. And Jerry and Jackie know that we are within a group of our own doing writing in our first person stories. So this is absolutely great.
Thanks, Gloria. I think as editors, one of the things that we kept in mind was trying to have this lens of accessibility from the perspective of a wide range of readers. And so we were thinking we wanted to make sure it was something that undergrads and community college students and even advanced high school students would be able to track and follow and not have too much jargon in there. And when we did that, we'd have definitions and clarifications.
Well, we are approaching that time, and just want to thank everyone for being present at this book launch, at the second one for this book today. And thank you, authors, for coming and sharing about your case studies. And thank you for attendees for coming, engaging, collaborating, and supporting. We look forward to future events about the book. And so thank you. And if you haven't checked it out, check it out and share it with others. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Yeah,